Give a warm welcome to Rob.
I feel like I'm in class again. But yeah, while she's doing that, I want to say thank you to the CreativeMornings team, thank you Olivia and all the sponsors. Appreciate you, thank you, Olivia. Awesome. And hi everyone. This will be a little bit interactive. Like I'll be asking you guys questions throughout the whole time, and figuring out little things like what's your why, what kind of diseases of motivation do you suffer from, and how do you cure and then how do you cure that with your motivational medicine? And jumping in, not too qualified to talk about everything, but when it comes to sports and creativity, I feel like I've got an edge to it. Grew up in an athletic family. My mom is on the All Decades team at Tulsa, ran track there. My father's been an athlete coach for 25 plus years at TCU, played in the league, and I played 4 years at SMU. So we've been there. And one of the things that they consistently ask you when you're starting is, what's your why? Why are you doing this? Why am I here talking this morning? Why did I go through 4 years of SMU? This is me throwing up, eating like 4 meals a day before 12 p.m. So why did we do that? And it all kind of comes back to being a pluralist. For me, it's about showing people that you do more than one thing consistently and being more than, I guess that you're intended. When you're an athlete or an artist, you tend to get put in a box pretty quickly. And one of the things that really helped me was trying to break out of that. Here are some messages from other athletes telling me that, what they saw on ESPN inspired them to keep going. So that's my why. Now this is the interactive part. What is your why? I've seen you, and this guy knows it a few times. Yeah, it's your turn. Yeah.
I would say my primary why is I have a love for people, and I have a love for community, and I just have a love for humanity. And I think we're hurting right now. And my why is I want to have a positive impact in the world at large, but primarily through the creatives community, because I think that we as creatives have a definite power to affect change globally. That's my why.
That's a great why, and we'll talk about why that's also a great why a little bit later too. So, but sometimes, even though you do have a why, it's hard to motivate yourself. And I know even today, I was like, why didn't I still not believe this earlier? Why did I commit to this? Why did I do this? And it does go back to what's your why, but sometimes that's not enough. Day in, day out, you get to do this as long as you're armed, and you're trying to figure out, what you do today and how it affects tomorrow. And this is my art for people that didn't know me. So what you can kind of notice here is perfectionism, underachieving, fear of failure, fear of success and expectations, and learned helplessness are all diseases of motivation. And those all affect how you go through your day-to-day. We learned this in sports psychology, playing football. So they told us, first, perfection. If you want every single play to be perfect, you're more than likely going to fail. It's about the process and disconnecting your outcome from the actual process and your personality. And that can lead to training. As creatives here, you suffer from burnout. Yeah, I think there should be more hands, but that's okay. And that comes from that need to feel perfect, to be perfect. Fear of failure is also a super common one. That can lead to performance anxiety, kind of what I'm experiencing right now. No, I'm just kidding. No, but that comes from being intrinsically motivated. If you're always worried about how good people tell you that you are, a lot of times you can miss, the process and how that develops. There's fear of success and expectations. So there's a lot of pressure that comes with being number one. Whenever you're chasing, it's a little bit easier, but when you're getting chased, first of all, they say you're faster because you're more afraid, and then that can lead to letting up during competition, not performing the best, and procrastination. something that I've experienced a lot was sometimes when you lose often, especially in sports. I was a smaller kid growing up, came in into college at 158 pounds, and if you're a safety, you kind of know that's really, really light. So you're used to kind of taking hits. Every opponent seems unfair, and how you can kind of do how that happens and presents itself is sometimes you give up a little bit easier, and it's harder to keep going. And it's the same in creative life. Like, when you feel like, you know, someone might have more followers, or there's people who are doing things better than you, or you're consistently, you know, making mistakes in your creative life, it's easier to give up and almost expect a loss. And all of those in my head lead to underachieving. With creatives, I see a lot, like, there's people who are naturally gifted, and sometimes that leads to like a lack of a work ethic, or people telling you that creativity is innate and it's not a muscle. I think that's a new concept that we're just kind of seeing, is that creativity is a muscle and you can work it. And all of those, there's a term that we like to use called locking in. So sometimes if you suffer from those motivational diseases enough, it leads to locking in and really being able to be that turning point, change that momentum, and then we can get into the positive part, which is the motivational medicine and cures for those things. A little bit more. So after football, I was telling somebody this earlier. I complained a lot about my hands not working. So you always like are using your hands, you're always jamming, you're always pushing. And sometimes that's not good for your art. So you can see it's a little bit more abstracted, and instead of making an excuse, I tried to change my situation. And a lot of that comes from emotional flexibility. The ability to handle different situations in a balanced or non-defensive form. Who here is hard at, who's here is not the best at taking a critique? Yeah, I'm not the best at taking a critique. Yeah, you're the only one who's not yet.
Some of those things where more.
Yeah, more hands should go. That's okay. In William Mark's class and being creative, that was my first time actually experiencing critiques and people telling me like, hey, maybe this idea isn't big enough for me to expand on this. And it's the same in sports. Sometimes, as soon as you get on campus, you know that you're not good enough to be there physically. But how you can do that is separating yourself from the outcome, the immediate outcome, and just trusting the process. Same as being a creator. This was something that was new for me, and I had to be extremely emotionally flexible with this. First time connecting athletes and brands and with sneaker politics and SMU. There was a ton of things that went wrong. Athletes showed up late, sneaker politics didn't have some of the stuff ready, no hate to them. And you know, not as many people showed up as we needed, but what we had to do was adjust to make the athletes feel comfortable, make the brand feel comfortable, and at the end of the day, figure out how to do the product at the same time. So all of that stuff happened on our feet. And I noticed that parallel with football too. Sometimes you get hit and it hurts a lot. So the only way you can really adjust is to pop up. Learned effectiveness is redefining the success. Instead of looking at the outcome, it's about improving yourself. And that's why I like your why so much. Not in there at all. It wasn't talking about, I want to make X impact on this many people. You just talked about the impact that you wanted to make every single day to the amount of people that you were present for. And that's an ongoing why, which I really appreciate it. And developing a short-term goal to see the small successes. Tracking your progress is huge. As a creative, I don't know how often we track our progress outside of followers, outside of sales, but sometimes those progresses where you're like, I just want to get a little bit better every single day can make a huge difference. So these were big progresses, but they were the sum of small ones. This was during our game versus Cincinnati that they put the artwork up. None of this really had sold at the time, so it was just about adding artwork, adding to the portfolio, which we all know is important. And then to see it culminate at the end is all of it selling, all of it being on ESPN, then turning that into the billboard. None of those were my outcomes. That wasn't something that I was looking for, but it was how do I be the best at what I do consistently and do it to the best of my abilities. Emotional strength, I feel like we all kind of understand this, is how do you handle great emotional forces and sustain your fighting spirit consistently. Whenever you're not the best painter, whenever you're not the best artist, what do you usually do? Does somebody have a, I was going to that out, but it's fine. Yeah, but expanding your comfort zone, maybe this is the easier one. What do you guys do to expand your comfort zone? Personally, I'll give you my stories. I like to travel, I like to jump around, and just see what other people are doing. When it was football, I actively tried to get to the front of the line. If it was class, I actively tried to get in the front of the class because, I mean, that's extremely uncomfortable for me. This is extremely uncomfortable for me also. So, examples. I know, Minji, you like to travel. Is that how you get out of your comfort zone?
Yes, yes. Yes and no, because that's kind of like part of my job. Being a flight attendant. But it is the way actually, like, because you're away from the reality, right? It's my reality still because I'm at work, but at the same time, I'm just away from, you know, all the work stuff, like being a full-time artist, I'm away from my materials, I'm away from my family, my duty, mom duty. So yeah, that's another way of me just healing, charge myself, and come back and do better and more.
I love that. And to Minji's point about charging yourself and coming back better, a lot of that leads to those small incremental jumps about and how you perform. These are an example, personal example for me of like recharging and having to deal with some emotional things while you're also having to perform. During this time, my aunt died, my cousin died, and this was also 9 p.m. the day before we had a game. And they asked me to do an ESPN interview. And kind of trying to figure out how do I deal with this, how do I really take the shower, calm down, figure it out. You have to learn how to be emotionally strong and flexible, and that's not easy. And great point for that Minji also just made was taking time to enjoy the successes. That's how you become emotionally resilient. Being able to handle setbacks and recovering from those in whichever way that you do it, that's a great indicator of success. And it helps you figure out minor stresses when major stresses happen. This is a typical surgery where they had to reconnect my bone to my leg, pretty much. And then this is a rod that they inserted about 2 years later. This is a company that didn't work out totally. So trying to figure out how to bounce back from those athletically and creatively was an example of how I try to be emotionally resilient. And then emotional responsiveness. What we used to do when we played football to activate that in whichever way was a call and response. So we did the hotter the heat, the harder the steel, which is, as an example, kind of culminates that. How do you be emotionally strong? How are you responsive? How are you resilient? And then how do you execute it and learn effectiveness? And sometimes it's extremely hot and you have to be steel. This is an example of how my team was emotionally responsive to some of the stuff post 2020. We created a whole nonprofit called the Talk Collective, and me and 10 other teammates organized weekly community activations and organizations, partnered up with our calling to distribute food, blankets, and different materials to the Dallas city. And this is Rob Grass, my business partner. He's one of the most emotionally responsive people that I know. My friend sat me down about a year ago and told me, hey, what do you want to do with your art? What do you want to do with creativity? Where do you want to be in 10 years? And that led me to working on a business plan called Nostalgia Noise. Today, that business plan, that idea has around 4,000 members. We activate 4 to 5 times in our studio in Dallas, and we do one big event a month. And with that, we both learned that you have to kind of roll with the punches. And when it comes to creativity, it's never, Mark, you say this all the time, sometimes you have to kill your darlings. And not every idea is a great idea. So how do you take that information and run with it? All of those lead to momentum, or how I view momentum. If you can be emotionally responsive, resilient, and strong, you can create momentum in your own life, creatively and athletically. When it relates to creativity, what I've seen is the more work you create, the better your work gets, and the more you lose, if that's your goal. But really recentering all of that around your why. How can you move fast, and how can you move in the right direction? Thank you.
We're great on time. So we can do, 10 minutes of questions, and you'll open it up to the audience. If you can speak up, or you can do the motion.
What is the purpose of nostalgia and noise?
Yeah, so we're a community platform for art, music, and culture, and we want to operate in that space where we can help emerging artists or artists of all levels connect with commerce, business, and the community. I felt like as an artist in Dallas, I wasn't able to connect with community totally, and nostalgia in ways is a word that helped me and just produced a bigger scale.
How did you successfully taper off from being, obviously, an athlete, right, a college athlete, to transitioning in that artistic space? And I know it's not like you stop one day and then go here, or when you stop training, there's this noise that's like, I should be training, or how do you reconcile the two? Because you're still very much focused, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of kept the same schedule for almost a year, where I just woke up at 6 a.m. train, then I would sit down, like, I had homework, but I didn't. So I would sit down at like 9 a.m. and just draw, sketch, watch some sort of TED Talk or something like that, and then kind of go throughout the day. I wish that I could say that I changed a whole lot, but I think the schedule with football helped me so much, just knowing when I needed to do things, how I needed to do things, and then it wasn't, do I feel motivated to paint, or do I feel motivated to draw? It was like, this is my time to draw. So kind of like setting out that 4 to 5 hours every single day, and executing.
Were you always training?
Yeah.
You were in sports, but were you always like drawing stuff as a kid? And after football, you just kind of started doing more of that?
A little bit of both, yeah. I mean, I was always creative, like as in I was always sketching and not paying attention when people were talking. But when I got to SMU, one of my friends, Caleb, actually told me about advertising. I had no idea what that was. And that introduced me to Willie Baronet and Mark Allen. And from there, I feel like I got way more creative because I figured out that it was a skill, kind of like I was talking about, and that it's not just some innate thing. So I think, yes and no. Post-grad, definitely more focused on art.
What is your relationship with art now? Like, are you trying to create it to like sell it, make a business out of it, or are you just doing it because you love doing it and it's like a release for you? What's like your
I think it's a little bit of both. Right now, I think I'm just trying to give myself the space to grow as an artist. Like, I don't have an MFA, I don't have any of that. So love to learn more about what does that mean. How can you operate whenever you do need money, but you also want to stay true to your craft? Is there a clear space, and how to do that? I think that's what nostalgia noise also is for me personally, is figuring out how do we operate in this landscape while also trying to stay creative and build a community for other people.
How did your parents receive, when you first decided, like, Illinois to do art?
Yeah.
How's, first in schools?
that I think because we grew up in a super athletic family and everybody understood that sports ends one day, I think the question for them was more like, is this the right decision post the end of your athletic career? The year after I left school was, do I go play again? Do I just be a full-time artist? Do I go learn as much about the world as possible? I ended up working for a guy named Scott Terrell who, taught me a lot about, being on your feet and staying on your toes, and just executing with, the tools that you have right then. I think that kind of showed them that there is some validity to a creative career, and for people who are on the outside, they're like, what do you do day to day? But I think just showing them a product at the end of the day helped a lot.
What are you enjoying most about your art right now? Like a subject matter or a style, or what's exciting you?
Movement, yeah. So I work a lot with, one of those paintings I did was a Bernese sculpture that I just love, like movement and playing with different textures and playing with scale too.
Can you go back to what you're just mentioning?
This one right here.
Yeah, that's what I like. Cool.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What is your current why?
My current why, I think it's the same why I started with, is to show people that you can be multiple things, you can be a pluralist. I think I look up to guys kind of like Pharrell, who are a musician, artist, a creative director, whatever their inkling is, they just do it. And I think that part of what I want to do is be that for, people who are coming up, is just do it. I feel like I didn't see a lot of athletes in the creative sphere, and that incentivized me when I came up to not tell anyone I was an artist. I didn't tell anyone on the team I painted, didn't post about it actively. So I always think about, like, if I was a little more confident, if I would have known that there was a person out there that had like a playbook to what I did, would I have done it differently? So that's kind of how I look at it.
What are you working on right now, and what do you think is next for you with your art career?
Yeah, still grinding on the Nostalgia Noise right now. What's next for me? I think bigger pieces, more pieces, just exploring what like color, movement, physicality means to me in art. So yeah, that's what I'm up to.
What does the work of Nostalgia Noise look like? You mentioned some events and different things. Like, can you give us an overview?
Yeah, so events, community programs, kind of like this, bringing in different artists, designers, speakers for panels, working on licensing deals. So they can be pairing up artists with the brand, like a different brand, for example, Benji or a label, or working with a beer company doing the art for that beer, just trying to get residual income for artists in an actual way, similar to kind of what an NFT would do, but yeah.
Do you have a dream brand that you want to collaborate with? Do you have
Ooh, dream brand. It was right there too. Yeah, no, it obviously Caribbean would be great. But I think like Emily on Dior is another one. That one would be super sick, or like Kid, something like that.
What advice do you have for somebody who's kind of at the opposite end of their creative career, who, as you're in this, whatever industry, creative industry that you're in, take on new responsibilities, you start taking on more management stuff, and then you start seeing your first love getting crowded out. So what advice do you have somebody to get back into this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I hate to go back to the disease of motivation, but I actually was talking to my dad about this, because he's on that. He loves training, but now he's creating programs that figuring out, like, you know, what pieces to go where do you guys are coming to do that job. And he's slowly getting farther and farther away from the actual gym. And I think for him it was finding that time to just be, in this case, creative. Blocking off the time to listen to a podcast, or I saw him in the car the other day, re-watching like what are the coverages of football, which is the first thing that you learn when you're playing. Like how do you go through this play? What are these pieces doing? I think it was rediscovering his why and why he loved the game, why he loves the process. Honestly, yeah. Does that answer your question?
With all the obstacles you went through, do you think it was harder to go through the learning curve of going through that at first, or being consistent with all the continual obstacles?
Oh, yeah, that's a hard one. I think there's always little hurdles after the big hurdle. Yeah. So those questions are kind of combined. It's just like all the really difficult thing. I think the hardest part initially is to kind of find your why again. Like, why would I even rehab myself to do this again? You know, and then post that, it's why am I waking up to do this rehab versus okay, I really want to run in a straight line, but I can't cut like I used to. And then it's dealing with like different emotional hurdles post that physical hurdle. Is that thanks? That's great. There was another one.
First, I just want to say I'm super proud of you. The question is, what's scaring you creatively right now?
It's a great question. I think throughout like playing and with creativity also, like I definitely suffer from like a fear of an expectation. I think it's like one of in my head, like, my worst case scenario would be like having a gallery show with all the pieces sold out, because then more people would expect that from me next time. And I think I'm right now trying to heal that within me. I think that's scares me creatively. And then also just feeling I'm not authentic. Like at what point do you become number one and you're seen as like a sellout? You know? So I think that's probably what I'm most afraid of.
One more. So how do we support you? How do we see more of your work?
Oh yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's at RA5UN. And then Nostalgia Noise. Please come to a Nostalgia Noise event. At the end of the day, I know this whole presentation was about me, but it's not about me. It's about Dallas and creating like a deep, rich cultural fabric here. And I think we can do that with more and more access to creativity and knowing more creatives in Dallas.
Do you have an event tonight or something?
Yeah. Again, it was right there. Yes, we do. So we do studio activation. So we have a studio down there in Good Latimer, and we host painting classes. We host what we call painting experiences that are led by artists who lead panel talks. One of those tonight is a skateboard painting experience. So we have 50 skateboards. You can come paint one. Paint one, spray one, do whatever you need to do. And then if you need a little bit more instruction, I'll be there too.
All right. Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, please check out Nostalgia Noise, follow Rob, we'll send out all of his information for you to follow